Nothing irritates mediocrity more than the presence of excellence. It's not just a catchy line, it's a fact etched into the very wiring of human behavior. Studies show that people are neurologically wired to respond with stress and even aggression when confronted with someone operating beyond their perceived limits. In other words, when you walk through life as a chosen one, calm, grounded, unstoppable, you aren't just living your truth. You are triggering an instinctual panic in everyone who measures the world through limitation, envy, or outdated expectations. This is why haters don't just dislike you, they react to you almost involuntarily. It's a mix of admiration they can't claim and insecurity they can't hide. And here's the kicker. It doesn't matter if you never confront them or even acknowledge their existence. Your energy, your alignment, your refusal to shrink is enough to make them grind their teeth in silent fury while you're busy moving mountains. It's fascinating, almost funny if you think about it. People will spend hours plotting ways to knock you down, yet they can't even come close, because the very qualities that make you untouchable, resilience, clarity, and a sense of purpose, aren't things they can manipulate or steal. You've become proof of everything they've refused to become, and that realization alone is like a small personal apocalypse for them. And here's an astonishing truth most people will never tell you. The louder they get, the stronger you actually are. Every insult, every shade, every hidden jab is like a confirmation stamp from the universe saying, "You are exactly where you're supposed to be. Keep going." The irony is delicious. You're thriving in the light, and they're flailing in the shadows, trying desperately to invent storms that don't exist. So strap in, because we're diving deep into the real reasons why your presence makes haters furious. This isn't surface-level nonsense about jealousy or petty spite. This is about the energy you carry, the power you radiate, and the unshakable truth that some people simply cannot handle a chosen one walking unbothered through life. And yes, we'll even sprinkle a little humor along the way, because if they're going to lose their minds, you might as well enjoy the show. Number 1, you expose their self-deception. Without saying a word, your presence alone is a constant, unavoidable reflection for people who live in denial. They spend years building walls around their insecurities, crafting stories to make themselves feel adequate, smart, or morally justified. They tell themselves they're content, that they're doing enough, that their choices are right. Then you show up, living on a different frequency, moving through life with clarity, purpose, and alignment, and suddenly all of their comforting illusions start to crack. You don't have to confront them, argue with them, or prove anything. They feel it simply because you exist. You are a walking indictment of the excuses they hide behind, the shortcuts they've taken, and the potential they've left unclaimed. This is what makes them so irrationally angry. They're not mad at you for what you're doing. They're mad that your reality forces them to face theirs. Your consistency, your ability to rise above drama, your calm confidence, it's a constant reminder of what they could have been if they had made the hard choices. It's subtle, almost invisible, but deadly to their ego. You don't have to speak a single word. They feel the judgment of your existence in every interaction, in every space you occupy, and in every success you achieve. The rage that comes from this isn't logical, it's instinctual. They are wired to protect their own sense of self, and when someone demonstrates the courage to live beyond their limitations, their psyche interprets it as an attack. That's why people lash out at those who are unapologetically themselves, even if the person being attacked has done nothing wrong. You are the embodiment of a truth they've avoided, that growth, responsibility, and authenticity are available, but only if you're willing to endure discomfort and reject complacency. In short, you make them angry because you exist as the evidence of everything they've been avoiding. You are the silent proof of their own failures and the unspoken challenge to rise or stay buried in their illusions. And no matter how much they try to twist reality or manipulate perception, your life remains undeniable, unstoppable, and infuriating to anyone who refuses to confront themselves. Number 2. You didn't break. When their blueprint said, "You should have." There are people in this world who map out your life before you even realize you're playing the game. They calculate how much struggle you can handle, how many times you'll bend under pressure, and how far they can push you before you crack. They expect you to fit neatly into their predictions, to fail exactly where they think you should, to collapse at the moments they've pre-planned. But you didn't. You kept standing. You kept moving. Every time they expected your spirit to shatter, it didn't. Every time they tried to manipulate, control, or intimidate, you remained unshaken. That's what enrages them more than anything. They were counting on your collapse. And when it doesn't happen, their whole sense of power is exposed as a lie. You weren't supposed to thrive under the weight they stacked on your shoulders, but you did. You weren't supposed to rise above their schemes or see through the narratives they spun, but you did. And each time you proved them wrong, their frustration grew, not because you were doing something extraordinary, but because you denied them the satisfaction of seeing you broken. They live in a world where control is currency, and when that currency fails to influence you, it feels like a personal insult. It's not just anger, it's disbelief mixed with fear. They can't understand how someone can endure, persist, and grow while they are desperately trying to see failure. You are the anomaly in their calculations, the variable that ruins their expectations. That's why their reactions often feel irrational, extreme, or disproportionate. They've invested so heavily in predicting your defeat that your resilience becomes a threat to their entire worldview. By refusing to break, you're not just surviving, you're proving that their influence has limits. You're showing that your life is yours to navigate, unchained from their expectations or timelines. Every unshaken step you take, every obstacle you overcome, becomes a silent declaration that they don't own your story. And that realization, more than anything, is what makes them mad, because it exposes the emptiness of the control they so desperately tried to wield. Number 3. Your inner authority makes external control useless. Most people spend their lives trying to control others because they can't control themselves. They manipulate, pressure, and coerce, hoping to bend the world to their version of reality. They assume that everyone will respond to threats, flattery, or approval the way they do. That's why they hate you. They quickly realize that nothing they throw at you works. Your decisions, your actions, and your emotions come from a place inside that they cannot reach, influence, or dictate. You operate with a personal compass that doesn't depend on their approval, their rules, or their validation. That freedom is terrifying for anyone who relies on control as their survival mechanism. When people are used to holding influence over others, encountering someone who refuses to be influenced is disorienting. They don't just get ignored, they get exposed. Every attempt to manipulate, provoke, or pressure you only highlights their lack of real power. They might escalate, lash out, or become irrational, but you remain steady, unmoved by the games they're desperate to play. The more they push, the more obvious it becomes that their authority is nothing compared to your inner guidance. Your calm, self-directed energy makes them insecure because it shows how fragile their own sense of control really is. They can't understand living by internal rules because their life depends on external validation. They try to measure your success, predict your behavior, and shape your choices, but every step you take proves that they are powerless over someone who answers only to themselves. That invisibly silent rebellion enrages them, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you refuse to operate on their terms. By owning your inner authority, you demonstrate a kind of untouchable power. You're not fighting them, you're simply moving in alignment with your own truth. And in doing so, you become a constant reminder of the gap between those who survive on control and those who thrive on independence. That gap, the one they can never bridge, is why they can't stand your presence. You are uncontainable, unbought, and unshakable, and that fact alone drives them insane. Number 4. You threaten their hierarchy by existing outside it. Most people measure worth and power through hierarchy, ranking everyone around them in a system where they know the rules and can predict the outcomes. They are comfortable when everyone moves in predictable patterns, when influence can be bought or coerced, and when control reinforces their sense of importance. You, as a chosen one, don't play by their system. You don't climb their ladder, beg for permission, or wait for someone else to validate your progress. You create your own lane, and that alone terrifies them. Your success and your freedom exist outside the boundaries they understand, and that breaks the order they rely on to feel safe. When someone lives outside their hierarchy, it exposes the fragility of the entire structure. They can no longer claim superiority simply because of position or title, and they can't assert dominance over you because your alignment, your power, and your value are independent of their rules. That makes them desperate. They become obsessed with proving themselves, undermining you, or forcing you into their system, but none of it works because you were never part of it to begin with. Your existence is a constant reminder that their control is limited, their influence is conditional, and their perceived superiority is an illusion. The anger you provoke isn't personal, it's structural. They are wired to maintain order, and anyone who operates freely outside that order threatens their sense of stability. Every achievement you accomplish, every decision you make on your own terms, every boundary you set without apology destabilizes their carefully constructed sense of power. They may try to shame, manipulate, or belittle you, but it has the opposite effect. It only highlights their dependence on systems that you don't need. By refusing to participate in their hierarchy, you reveal the truth they've been avoiding. Authority is not the same as influence, rank does not equal respect, and control over others is never the same as mastery over self. Your independence, your clarity, and your alignment exist outside the realm they can govern, and that is exactly why your presence makes them furious. You don't just defy them, you show the weakness in the world they rely on to feel strong. Number 5. You trigger their unlived potential. One of the most uncomfortable truths for anyone stuck in mediocrity is seeing someone else fully alive, fully aligned, and fully actualized. Your growth, your clarity, and your relentless pursuit of purpose act like a spotlight on the life they've refused to live. It's not just envy. They are confronted with the evidence of what they could have been, and that recognition is unbearable. Every step you take outside their comfort zone, every boundary you enforce, every achievement you claim is a reflection of their own abandoned potential. You don't even have to try to provoke them. The simple fact that you exist at a higher frequency is enough to ignite resentment. They hate you because you remind them of choices they didn't make. You embody the courage, discipline, and clarity they avoid because facing it would mean confronting themselves. The life they've settled for feels smaller, dimmer, and emptier in comparison, and that contrast is a psychological punch they can't ignore. Unlike you, they find excuses, blame circumstances, or depend on systems to define their worth. Watching you navigate life with independence and purpose forces them to see their excuses for what they are, weakness dressed as practicality. That awareness triggers anger because it threatens their fragile self-image. You don't have to flaunt your success to trigger this reaction. It's the authenticity of your existence that rattles them. Every confident move you make, Every choice you take ownership of, and every lesson you learn through growth silently screams what they've denied themselves. Your presence becomes a mirror they can't look away from, and like any person unwilling to face uncomfortable truth, they lash out. Ultimately, your life forces them to acknowledge the life they've avoided. They can't destroy your reality, and they can't diminish the truth of your potential. That makes them furious, not because of what you're doing, but because your existence exposes the cracks in theirs. You are living proof that potential is meant to be realized, and that realization, shining so clearly outside their grasp, is the most infuriating thing they'll ever witness. Number 6. You refuse to perform gratitude for bare minimum treatment. Most people operate under a quiet, unspoken system. They give the bare minimum and expect maximum acknowledgement. They think that by providing just enough attention, support, or approval, they can maintain control, earn loyalty, or create indebtedness. You, as a chosen one, don't play by that script. You don't shower praise for crumbs, you don't over-celebrate the ordinary, and you don't bow to entitlement disguised as generosity. That refusal cuts deeper than any confrontation because it exposes the hollowness of what they've been offering. Your standards make them uncomfortable. They see how little they've actually contributed, and your lack of theatrical gratitude amplifies the truth. They hate that you don't validate their attempts to manipulate your perception of reality. They're used to people performing emotional gymnastics to appease them, to publicly reinforce their ego, or to express gratitude simply for existing in the same space. You break that pattern. Every time you maintain dignity and refuse to inflate their sense of importance, you puncture the illusion they've built around themselves. Their anger is a direct reaction to being unmasked. They expected a performative response, a scripted gratitude, and when it doesn't come, it feels like rejection, when in reality, it's simply the natural consequence of your awareness and self-respect. Your refusal to perform gratitude for the bare minimum also forces them to confront their inadequacies. They can't deny that what they offered was small, incomplete, or lacking, because your response, or your lack of exaggerated praise, highlights it without a single word. It's not about ingratitude, it's about refusing to endorse mediocrity with your energy. That subtle but unmistakable stand enrages those who thrive on control, leverage, and perception management because it removes the validation they rely on to feel significant. By refusing to over-celebrate the ordinary, you teach an unspoken lesson. Value is not determined by expectation, entitlement, or manipulation. It is earned, recognized, and respected. That principle, lived every day, infuriates those who have built a life on minimum effort and maximum claim, because it proves that your power, your dignity, and your alignment cannot be purchased or coerced. Number 7. Your healing makes their wounds look neglected. There's a quiet rage that builds in people who avoid their own pain, and your presence triggers it effortlessly. When you face your struggles head-on, work through your trauma, and rise from difficulty stronger than before, it doesn't just show your resilience, it exposes their avoidance. They've spent years burying, ignoring, or deflecting their wounds, convincing themselves that time alone is enough to heal what was broken. Then you come along, visibly thriving, emotionally aware, and aligned, and suddenly their own stagnation is impossible to ignore. That contrast, more than anything else, sparks frustration, resentment, and envy. They hate you not because you healed faster or better, but because your healing forces them to confront the neglect they've tolerated in themselves. Every time you act with clarity, composure, or self-respect, it highlights the choices they refuse to make, the lessons they refuse to learn, and the growth they refuse to pursue. Your life becomes a living indictment of what they could have done if they had taken responsibility for their own wounds. That reflection is painful, and most people react with anger rather than acknowledgement. It's even more intense because your healing isn't performative. You don't announce your progress or flaunt your transformation. It's in the quiet strength you carry, the consistency of your choices, and the energy you project. That silent power cuts deeper than any confrontation could. They feel it in interactions, in social dynamics, and in spaces they assumed they controlled. Your presence is a reminder that true healing cannot be faked, and anything less than your courage exposes their own half-hearted attempts. By working on yourself, you're not just moving forward, you're illuminating their inaction. They lash out because they can't diminish what you've built internally. You are proof that growth and transformation are possible, and that fact, undeniable and visible, enrages those who remain trapped in avoidance. Your evolution doesn't just highlight their wounds, it makes their refusal to heal feel like failure, and that realization is more than they can tolerate. Number 8. You can't be owned, branded, or claimed. One of the things that makes people furious is the realization that you are untouchable in ways they can't control. Most people operate on possession. They measure relationships, influence, and loyalty like property. They try to brand you, claim you, or define your identity according to their comfort and expectations. They want you to fit into a box, to belong to their narrative, or to behave in ways that reinforce their sense of control. You refuse every one of these constraints. You live on your own terms, answer to your own principles, and define yourself by your own standards. That freedom isn't just intimidating, it's enraging for anyone who believes the world should bend to their will. They hate that you don't require permission, approval, or validation from them. Their attempts to categorize, label, or own you fall flat because your value, your choices, and your energy are independent of their narrative. You cannot be manipulated into loyalty, guilt, or dependence because your foundation is built on internal authority. Every move they make to claim or control you becomes a reflection of their own insecurity and powerlessness. Their frustration grows because the more they try, the more obvious it becomes that you are sovereign, untethered, and uncompromising in your self-determination. This anger often disguises itself in criticism, mockery, or attempts to shame, but it stems from one truth. They cannot dictate who you are. You are unclaimable. Your identity, your path, and your evolution exist outside their influence. The independence you maintain is not rebellion, it is simply alignment with your own essence. By refusing to be owned, branded, or claimed, you demonstrate a kind of untouchable strength that can't be measured or negotiated. You don't need to fight them to prove it. Your existence alone does the work. That unshakable autonomy exposes their attempts at control as hollow, and that exposure is precisely what makes them lose composure. You are free, and that freedom, quiet, unwavering, and absolute, is unbearable for those who survive by trying to possess what cannot be possessed. Number 9, you break the unspoken agreement to stay small. There is a silent contract in many social circles and relationships. Don't outshine, don't challenge, don't grow too fast, don't shine brighter than the comfort zone they've built around themselves. Most people expect conformity because it makes them feel safe, secure, and superior in their limited perspective. You, as a chosen one, break that contract simply by existing authentically and refusing to shrink to fit their expectations. Every step you take toward growth, independence, and purpose violates the invisible rules they rely on to maintain control and comfort. That violation enrages them because it exposes the fragility of their own boundaries and the mediocrity they've accepted. Your refusal to stay small is a mirror for everyone around you. They are forced to recognize how much they've compromised, how many shortcuts they've taken, and how often they've allowed fear to dictate their choices. Your growth doesn't just highlight their stagnation, it challenges the very system of control they've depended on. That's why people who feel threatened by your rise often lash out, gossip, or try to diminish your achievements. They aren't mad at what you're doing. They're mad at the truth your progress reveals about them. What makes this even more infuriating for them is that you don't ask for permission to grow. You don't wait for their approval, guidance, or blessing. You refuse to let anyone define your limits, and that autonomy is a direct threat to their sense of order and superiority. They want life to be predictable, and your growth shatters that illusion. By refusing to stay small, you demonstrate that life isn't about fitting into someone else's system or living within their comfort zone. You are proof that expansion, evolution, and authenticity exist outside the bounds of expectation. And that proof makes them uncomfortable, insecure, and furious. Your unwillingness to compromise your potential is a constant reminder that their attempts to maintain control are meaningless, and that awareness is more than they can handle. Number 10, your peace is an insult to their chaos. There are people who thrive on drama, manipulation, and emotional turbulence because it gives them a sense of control, importance, or distraction from their own inner emptiness. Your calm, centered energy is the exact opposite of everything they rely on, and that contrast feels like an insult to their entire way of being. When you move through life with composure, clarity, and a grounded sense of self, it exposes the chaos they've normalized and the instability they've depended on to feel relevant or in charge. Your peace doesn't just unsettle them, it provokes a deep instinctual frustration because it proves that stability and control are possible even without the chaos they thrive on. They hate that your calmness isn't performative. It doesn't require their permission, acknowledgement, or influence to exist. You don't react to provocation, bend under pressure, or feed into their drama, and that drives them insane because it renders their usual tactics powerless. The energy they try to manipulate, the games they play to get a reaction, all fall flat against someone who operates from inner peace. Every outburst or attempt to shake you only highlights their dependence on disorder while showcasing your independence from it. Your peace acts as a mirror, reflecting their restlessness, insecurity, and emotional volatility in ways they cannot ignore. They see the life they could have created if they had chosen discipline, awareness, and emotional responsibility. And that awareness makes them resentful, defensive, and reactive. Your mere presence silently questions why they settled for tension, conflict, and unnecessary struggle, and that is more infuriating than any direct confrontation. By living with calm authority, you demonstrate that strength isn't loud, drama isn't necessary, and influence isn't about creating chaos. Your steady energy proves that someone can thrive without feeding their toxicity, without succumbing to manipulation, and without trading their integrity for attention. And that realization, that your peace exists while theirs is self-created chaos, is unbearable for them. Your grounded presence exposes their weaknesses, and that exposure fuels the rage they cannot contain. Number 11. You didn't need their validation to become valuable. One of the most unsettling truths for people who thrive on control, influence, or ego is realizing that your worth exists independently of their approval. They are used to measuring success, loyalty, and significance through their ability to grant recognition or define importance. When someone achieves, grows, or claims their power without needing their permission, it shatters the foundation they've relied on to feel relevant. You didn't need their applause, agreement, or acknowledgement to rise, and that independence infuriates them because it proves their authority over others is limited at best, meaningless at worst. They hate that you refuse to center them in your life. Their expectation is simple: perform for their gaze, validate their presence, and ensure they feel essential to your journey. You didn't do that. You didn't ask for permission to exist fully, to chase your purpose, or to claim your achievements. That refusal to feed their ego is not rebellion, it's alignment with your own standards. And that alignment makes them defensive, irritated, and sometimes irrationally angry because it removes their sense of influence entirely. Your autonomy exposes the emptiness of their control. Every time you succeed, every time you navigate challenges with clarity, and every time you live authentically, it becomes undeniable that your value was never tied to them. That truth is corrosive to people who survive on the belief that they determine worth. They see that you are thriving in ways they cannot dictate or measure, and it forces them to confront the reality that their power over others is an illusion. By existing as someone whose value is inherent, self-determined, and untouchable, you challenge the systems of control they rely on. You demonstrate that significance isn't granted, it's claimed through alignment, courage, and self-respect. That realization is what makes them mad. They cannot manipulate it, steal it, or diminish it. You didn't just rise, you rose without them, and that freedom, the ability to exist fully without external approval, is an undeniable threat to anyone who needs to feel indispensable to feel important. Number 12. You're living proof that excuses don't protect anyone. Few things irritate people more than seeing someone face hardship, struggle, and adversity, and not use it as a crutch. They rely on excuses to justify stagnation, failure, or mediocrity, convincing themselves that circumstances, people, or events are responsible for their lack of progress. Then you appear, navigating challenges with resilience, accountability, and determination, and suddenly their carefully constructed world of justification starts to collapse. Your life becomes a glaring reminder that excuses are illusions, and that truth is both unavoidable and infuriating. They hate that you don't cloak your struggles in self-pity. You don't ask for sympathy, you don't exaggerate your hardships, and you don't let obstacles define you. You meet difficulties head-on, learn from them, and continue moving forward, which exposes the gap between their talk and their action. Every time you rise after a setback, every time you grow despite adversity, it underlines their avoidance, hesitation, and reliance on blame. They aren't angry at your success. They're angry that your approach highlights their own unwillingness to act. Your example makes them uncomfortable because it forces self-reflection, and self-reflection is rarely welcome for someone who has built a life around avoiding accountability. They see that your life operates on principles, discipline, and personal responsibility, and that reflection makes their excuses look flimsy, weak, and ineffective. The reality is painful. The very things they've been using as shields are meaningless when someone demonstrates how to transcend them. By living as proof that excuses are powerless, you disrupt their sense of comfort and authority. You silently teach that adversity is not a cage, it's a stepping stone, and that the only limit to achievement is the willingness to face reality head-on. That lesson, unspoken yet undeniable, infuriates anyone who clings to excuses for survival. Your presence doesn't just challenge them, it exposes the futility of their defenses and ignites a rage that stems from the fear that they, too, might one day have to face the truths they've avoided. Number 13. You carry truth that can't be controlled or rewritten. There's a unique kind of anger that comes from encountering someone whose life is anchored in truth. Truth that cannot be bent, distorted, or rewritten to fit someone else's narrative. Most people operate by manipulating perception, crafting stories, and controlling information to maintain a sense of power or superiority. They rely on the idea that reality can be influenced by appearances, gossip, or deception. Then you show up, living openly, authentically, and unshakably in alignment with what is real, and suddenly their control over the narrative crumbles. Your very existence is proof that truth is untouchable, and that realization drives them crazy. They hate that you cannot be gaslighted, pressured, or coerced into bending your reality to their liking. Lies, manipulation, and intimidation, these are the tools they depend on to dominate or influence others, but you are immune. You operate from integrity, clarity, and an internal compass that refuses to yield. Every attempt to distort your story, attack your character, or undermine your credibility only highlights the gap between their deception and your reality. Your steadfastness exposes the fragility of their illusions, and nothing infuriates a manipulator more than seeing the truth standing untouched in the face of their chaos. Your presence is a constant reminder that truth doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about who wants to rewrite it, who wants to control it, or who wants to spin it to fit their agenda. People who rely on perception and influence are unsettled by this because their power is built on malleability, while your power is built on unshakable fact. Every choice you make, every boundary you maintain, every success you achieve is a reflection of that immutable truth, and they can't bear it. By carrying truth that cannot be rewritten, you are untouchable in a way that transcends anger or jealousy. You are a living contradiction to their manipulation, a proof that reality exists outside their control, and a force that cannot be silenced or reshaped. That reality, clear and undeniable, is exactly why they react with frustration, resentment, and even rage. You are not just a witness to the truth. You are the truth in motion, and that power is unbearable for anyone who depends on lies to survive. Number 14. You're not afraid to outgrow people you once needed. One of the deepest triggers for resentment is witnessing someone evolve beyond the people who once mattered to them. Most people cling to familiarity, fear change, and define relationships by convenience rather than growth. They expect loyalty, presence, or influence to be unconditional, regardless of how it serves their stagnation or insecurity. You, as a chosen one, refuse to let anyone, no matter how close, limit your growth. You recognize that some connections are temporary, that certain influences are outdated, and that your evolution sometimes requires leaving people behind. That choice, simple as it is, drives them insane because it exposes their reliance on others to validate their existence. They hate that you don't compromise your expansion for comfort, nostalgia, or obligation. They see you moving forward, making decisions aligned with your purpose, and outgrowing dynamics that no longer serve your higher path. Every step you take beyond their reach highlights their inability to change, adapt, or elevate themselves. That contrast between your forward momentum and their static position fuels anger, insecurity, and even attempts to guilt you into regression. They may try to shame, manipulate, or provoke you to stay manageable, but your independence refuses to bend under pressure. Your choice to outgrow people is not about abandonment. It's about alignment. It signals a refusal to compromise your potential for the comfort of others, and it demonstrates the hard truth that personal evolution is non-negotiable. Your life moves according to your growth, not their expectation. And that autonomy is infuriating for anyone who wants to keep you within reach, within control, or within their narrative. By outgrowing relationships, patterns, and influences that no longer serve you, you reveal an uncomfortable truth. Progress requires detachment, courage, and self-prioritization. You expose the difference between survival and evolution, between fear and purpose. And that exposure, undeniable and unshakable, is exactly what makes them furious. You move, grow, and thrive, unchained from the limits they once hoped would hold you, and that freedom is a constant, unrelenting challenge to anyone unwilling or unable to evolve themselves. What we've uncovered today goes far beyond surface-level drama or petty jealousy. Every action, every reaction, and every ounce of frustration from those who oppose you is rooted in one undeniable truth. You operate on a level they cannot comprehend, control, or contain. You are a chosen one, and your existence challenges the very systems, beliefs, and comfort zones that others cling to. From exposing their self-deception to living proof that excuses are powerless. From refusing to perform gratitude for the bare minimum to outgrowing people who once mattered. Every aspect of your life radiates a kind of power that forces reflection, confrontation, and yes, anger in those who cannot match your clarity or courage. The reality is simple. You don't make your haters mad because you're doing something wrong. You make them mad because you refuse to conform to their expectations, refuse to shrink to make them comfortable, and refuse to allow their narratives to define you. Every time you rise, every time you stand firm, every time you choose your alignment over their approval, you remind them, and everyone watching, that your power is rooted in authenticity, resilience, and unshakable truth. That is not arrogance, that is not vanity, that is the manifestation of a life lived fully on your terms, a life that cannot be owned, manipulated, or contained. So, embrace it. Let their frustration be proof that you are exactly where you're meant to be. Let their anger be confirmation that your presence exposes truths they'd rather ignore. Let every challenge, every reaction, every attempt to limit you be the fuel that propels you higher. You are untouchable, unclaimable, and unstoppable, and the more they resist, the more undeniable your power becomes. If this message hit you hard, make sure to stand in your truth by hitting that subscribe button so you never miss another powerful insight. Smash the like button if you feel the strength of your own alignment. Drop a comment sharing your experiences, and share this video with anyone who needs to understand why their power cannot touch a chosen one. This is your moment, your path, and your awakening. Own it, embrace it, and let nothing stop you. God bless you.